After a bit of a longer than usual opening, though not too much, welcome to episode 501 of an Unearthly podcast and the premiere of our 20th season, streaming live on the 13th of February 2024 and featuring the regenerations of Doctor Who. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I just dropped my pizza, so I guess I'm vacuuming later.
Oh,
With
joy.
me are color commentator Alex Fireheart
Hello.
and technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
I went on an adventure.
What kind of adventure?
I went into one of the bigger nearby cities. Not Madison or Milwaukee, but I went up north towards Fond du Lac.
Ah,
Back in my late teen years in particular, me and my buddies would go up there very frequently to go to movies and go around the mall for a bit and stuff like that. The mall's like 2/3 gone now. Like, I don't mean it's closed. I mean it's
I think
gone.
ah. I was gonna say most malls have taken a downturn of some sort in the past 20 years, but
Yeah, there's like literally two of the bigger store areas are left, and that's it. Like, there's like a little thing that's like their back rooms that still says it's a mall, but like 2/3 of it is physically gone. There's like a giant patch of dirt between TJ Maxx and this big tent that was somewhere down the way, and that's where the rest of the mall used to be.
so
Like,
it's not even like it was demolished to build something else. It's
it's just been leveled so far. Yeah,
uh,
it's just gone. It's gone, McCready. My main reason to go out today was in part to just try and find a blanket. I'm looking for a nice blanket, and I want to like no longer use the Star Wars one I have. It's comfortable and all, but it's like I'm kind of meh at it right now. I would like something that's not the recently flubbed trilogy.
and I guessing you didn't want to just order online and not
I've
know what the quality would be like.
Yeah, that's just it. I don't know what the quality is going to be like, and I've tried looking around for other stuff, and I just can't seem to find anything, and at least nothing that with a solid measurement I can rely on. And it's like, frick it, I'll just go to the stores. Go to the stores. There's literally nothing here. I just can't win.
Can I just say shout out to Google because I had no idea what you said or how to spell it, and I punched in a relatively random array of letters that were in the general direction, and Google figured out what city I was trying to look up.
Fond du Lac.
Yeah,
It's Native American. Something about the lake.
got you. But by way of French, it looks like,
Hmm.
looking at how that's spelled. Which I mean, a lot of things that given something related to their native name are by way of French. So
But yeah, it's one of the relatively bigger cities. Went out to find that, didn't find it at all. Saw the state of the mall, became kind of depressed. Decided, you know what? Let's pep up my mood a bit before I go continuing my shopping. Did a quick search on my phone and found a hobby store like I want to say like 2-3 miles back. So I went that way, found them. Lots of stuff in there. That place was packed, like with lots of goodies. I upped the miles quite a bit, but I couldn't find. I'm very particular. I'm trying to find a D&D model for my reoccurring drow character, but trying to
got you.
find one that suits me is like a needle in a haystack.
Mm.
Because she's
So, in other
technically drow,
words,
but she's not your normal average drow because she's got some weird side extra world stuff to her.
got you. I imagine most of the Drow minis out there are drizzed. So
Or spiky ladies, yeah.
mm.
So I had to find like the right lady, and they had no regular elf rangers. And I'm like, are you kidding me? walk away with shame. But while I was there, I did peruse their comic books, which is something I normally don't see at a hobby store like that. So I'm going through their comic books. They had regular stuff as well as like the big collector stuff. And I found in their collector stuff a bunch of Conan stuff. Couldn't find like any volume 1s of all their collections there, but I did find the Serpent War, which was a short run when Marvel brought Conan back a couple years ago. Essentially, it's actually a short spin-off of another earlier Robert E. Howard story. And what they did with the sequel / spin-off to that for this short run was that they brought not only Conan in, but the original inspiration for Red Sonja and, what's his name? Solomon Kane, as well as Moon Knight from the Marvel comics to tie everything together.
Mm.
I've heard it's really good, so I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to put down $16 for a decent like copy with a slightly thicker cover so it'll last longer, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Got that, went back to shopping for the blanket, could never find one. I however managed to find 3 more lunches and a pair of scissors since my current pair has gone missing for like 2 weeks. I guarantee you I will start cleaning and suddenly find it in some forbidden corner. But yeah, so that was basically my day today. Outside of that, I've got a coworker who joined me on Discord. He wasn't able to get a hold of me the last couple of days because I was either busy or I was out on this trip, and he actually called me like tail end of my trip. I'm like, yeah, I'm actually in traffic right now. Thanks for the concern, but I didn't need to get going because I'm dodging lights right now. Played a little Pal World with him. Played a little bit of a Among Us game called Goose Goose Duck. And he has also joined the Wednesday night crew for ghost hunting. So if he sticks around long enough towards Halloween, I'll get him a shirt too. Trying to think of anything else. That's a lot of the major points. I've been working full time at the new current job. I'm sitting on at least 200 right now, and nothing else should be coming in at the moment. And the next paycheck should pay for the next bill and leave at least another extra 100 on top. Oh yeah, and I also got a big prop from one of the YouTubers I've been watching for like 2-3 years. Nice. That's why I'm down to 200. So that's gonna be nice when it comes in the mail. It's a nice big plastic hammer.
Okay.
So he's a moderator for a game called Rust.
I think you've talked about it.
Mm-hmm. If you know anything about the people in Rust, they can be very toxic, but they can also be really good people. Just depends, and it's full of cheaters. I mean, the anti-cheat really doesn't seem to catch on to them very fast. However, this guy and his group tend to be really good at finding people and getting rid of them before they cause trouble on the private servers that they work on. So he doesn't make any money as an admin, but his YouTube edits and his live streams of his work actually give him a lot of money. So kudos to him, and he's about to have a birthday in a couple of weeks, I believe. So happy birthday. And that's been my week, or a couple of weeks.
So I'm currently in my day of rest and recovery after, if you include travel, I was basically gone 6 days for the major conference in my field. 1 day of spending the time going through airports and train stations, 4 days of conferencing, and then another day of going through airports and train stations. It was mostly a good experience, except for the fact, so there was one person, and I'm not even sure if the name has been public, and I wouldn't go that far on this podcast anyway. But apparently, instead of submitting original research, they took numbers that were already out there from Pew, kind of changed them to like falsify and make it look as though the majority of Muslims supported terrorism, which is not what the original data said at all. and
Mm.
basically just used it as an excuse to run like an anti-Islam smear poster presentation. So it wasn't until other people, found this that it eventually got taken down, and everyone was like, "How the fuck did this get through review in the first place?" And yeah, so
Whoops.
a lot of people are upset. There's not a lot of information about how how that was approved, and people are like, why was the response so slow? Like an apology email went out after the conference was over when people were already going home. So there are some people who have decided not to go to grad school in my field because of that experience.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah, so just not a very good string of events in that specific issue.
Mm.
So that was the most interesting thing that's happened in my few weeks. Alex, you got anything?
Pretty much just. I mean, I talked about it with Bill before we started, but yeah, in the past couple of days, uh, the inside of one side of my mouth decided to swell up. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Um, I don't know if it's somehow related to the fact that I was accidentally awake for 24 hours.
Mm.
Um, and then only got like 7 hours of sleep after that, which was annoying as hell. Um,
I've been there.
it's worse at it was worse when I was at work because the pain started going up into. I mean, like at the moment, like it's weird. Talking is fine, but swallowing, eating, or drinking all hurt.
Hmm.
And I think that's just because that's something going into my mouth
Hmm.
that isn't just air. Um,
Yeah, it involves more muscles.
yeah. Um, and like, I can feel it in my ear right now when I got home from work the other day, and while I was at work the other day, I could feel it in my eye. And I was just like, it was like a thing of earlier before I joined the call, I was like, fuck it. I booked it like there was one doctor's appointment tomorrow, like 1:45 in the afternoon. I was like, fuck it. I need to get this looked at because I don't know what the fuck's going
Right.
on. But yeah, aside from that, I mean part of the reason I ended up being awake, uh for what ended up being 24 hours instead of like close to was because I worked a full day a full day, a 7.5 hour shift on Saturday. And I basically worked that to soften the blow of telling work, that's it. Like, you've taken too long to get me full-time work, so I'm not looking for full-time work anymore. Like, I've forgotten to clarify now that my position will probably shift to you've got until now I'm active, like it's just a matter of now I'm actively going to try and look for work elsewhere. You've got until I find full-time work elsewhere to get, you know,
Get
something for me.
Hmm.
get your heads out your backsides and get this
Yeah. Cuz
person full
like
time here.
Or,
yeah,
now
cuz
the downside is if they turn around and they're like, "Well, we hired your replacement and you're still here, so bye."
Well, I hope that replacement goes well, especially if, from what I heard, they're any good, because they don't even know.
well the funny thing is like yeah, like basically what was the final straw was that uh the actual like manager was away, so the person either directly under her or possibly on like equal footing with her decided that it would be a good idea to, rather than just offer it up to us who were already there, and choose from a pool of people that they already had. She was like, "Oh, we interviewed this woman several months ago for a job she didn't get. I'll just give it to her." And like, either that woman's got something out against me for some reason, or I don't know what, because apparently when the boss got back, she was pissed that she did that instead of the normal thing, because last time they just went, oh yeah, let's pick someone from outside first. That was given to someone who I don't even think is there anymore. So, between
Went
that,
swimmingly is what you're saying.
yeah, between that and then missing out on those 10 to 6 shifts, and they gave it to someone who probably hasn't even been here for a year. And I've been here now. I've been here for 10 years. Like, that basically says you don't give a shit. So why should I even remotely care to continue? Like, I mainly just stayed there because I was like, where the fuck else am I going to work? Like, I'm terrible at interviews. The only reason I got this job because the interview was, here's what you're going to do. You want to give it a shot? Yes. Okay. You start tomorrow. That's it. Most interviews are like,
You've held a job now for years. You got some confidence. Go do it. Trust me. As long as you got a decent resume of working somewhere for more than a couple months, people are looking. The last couple of jobs I hopped to, they were basically already like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And Meyer in particular is very happy. Oh, shoot, I just said them by name. Oh, well. My current employer, even though you heard its name, is very happy with me currently. I've been working there for over a month now, and outside of like maybe one or two coworkers, I honestly don't have any issues with anyone. And the one coworker was there only for a short while. They're a college kid, so they left now. And last I heard, they were already looking for another job anyways, so shrug. And another one currently, it's not that I have a problem with them so much as they keep doing weird things, and I'm like, what are you doing? And it keeps, and that becomes an issue. But anyways.
Before we can put any more feet in mouths, let's go on to tonight's show.
Let me get my toes
We've got
up
our
here.
typical birthdays. We've got a bit of Doctor Who news, not as much as you might expect for 3 weeks, but enough. And then, of course, instead of an episode review, we are once again doing a tier list.
I would assume because we started as late as we did, we might skip Geek Talk this week.
If we manage to go through it quickly, this tier list shouldn't be as long to go through as the last one. So
we've learned that we need to keep it going.
Yeah.
If we're good with the news, it shouldn't be an issue.
Also, speaking of news, we should go into this really quick since it's not Doctor Who directly related, but rest in peace to Carl Weathers, very prominent actor, especially during the 80s and 90s, who was just starting to make a comeback again and sadly has now passed away. What was the disease again?
Basically cardiovascular disease. Like it was just
just a very specific
atherosclerosis cardiovascular disease,
which does the hardening of the internal organs
arteries.
And so forth. Arteries. Okay. So
at the very least, from what I'm seeing, he died in his sleep at least. So
at least he went out peacefully. Yeah. So rest in peace, Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers, and hope you're enjoying your time up there in the big action show in the sky. But anyways, on to birthdays.
Yep.
So on the 26th of January, we have Mal Young, who was an executive producer for Doctor Who in Series 1, turned 67. On the 29th of January, we have Catherine Stewart, who played Jenny Flint in Series 6 through to 8, turned 36.
I just realized I did it again. I used series for some people and years for others. Oh well.
On the 30th of January, we have Daphne Ashbrook, who played Grace Holloway in the TV movie turned 61. On to February. On the 1st of February, we have Elizabeth Sladen, who played Sarah Jane Smith from 73 to 76 in 81, 83, and 2006 through to 2011. Would have been 78, but died in 2011 at the age of 65. On the 4th of February, we have Peter Butterworth, who played the meddling monk from 65 to 66. Would have been 105, but died in 79 at the age of 59. On the 5th, we have Michael Sheen, who was House in The Doctor's Wife, and David Tennant's queer platonic partner in in real life, but also in a bunch of stuff. They've done a bunch of stuff together at this point, I feel. Turned 55. On the 10th, we have Peter Purves, who was Stephen Taylor in 65, 66, and possibly the originator of did a random background role and then was a companion. Turned 85. And finally, on the 12th of February, we have Nabil Shaban, who played Syl from 85 to 86, and also I think has done so on Big Finish to some extent.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I
believe
think
he's
all
done
71.
some Big Finish and some other cameos as well.
I think everyone on this list has done some Big Finish work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Except for Peter Butterworth, he died too soon.
So yeah, happy birthday to Mal, Katrin, Daphne, Elizabeth, Peter, Michael, Peter, and Nabil. Moving on to, unfortunately, we do have a lost story this time. We're saying goodbye to Michael Jayston, who died on the 5th of February. I don't think a cause was given.
I couldn't find one.
Not publicly, anyway.
Yeah.
Seemingly, he just had an illness that did not last all that long, but long enough to take him.
Age of 88 is, in some circles, plenty cause of death.
Yeah. He was best known to Doctor Who fans for playing the Valeyard for all of the Trial of the Time Lord. With the Valeyard's whole deal being that he's supposed to be an amalgamation of the Doctor's darker sides between his 12th and final incarnations.
Which the bi-generation thing actually makes possible, but I'm not going into that theory.
Well, even then, they say 12th and final, so that's a lot of leeway that they don't say 13th. Yeah, he played the character opposite Colin Baker, and has played the character in Big Finish. Colin Baker had to say on his passing, "My dear friend Michael Jayston has left us today. I'm absolutely devastated. He was warm, witty, clever, naughty, and a very fine actor and wonderful man. My thoughts and love go to his wife Anne and daughter Katie. Heartbroken. Goodbye, my friend." I will say I was looking through his credits, and I was a little surprised to see that he's one of those few actors from that era that I would have figured, oh well, with when he started acting, there's a chance he might have been in Z-Cast, but he wasn't. Which also
they don't mention Avengers either, I think.
No. And it was still going by then, so it had only started in when did it start again? 62, so yeah. And like his first acting role was in, I think it's said 68. So there was a chance, 62. But he just wasn't on it.
1962 was his first television appearance.
Might have just been uncredited.
Oh, you're looking on IMDb and not the obituary.
Mm. Um. Yeah. Just trying to see if I can. Something else. But in any case,
Another interesting
generally,
Doctor Who tie I just saw in the article here is that he apparently played Tsar Nicholas II in a film called Nicholas and Alexander, and in the same said film, and then unknown Tom Baker played Rasputin.
and apparently that was the role that
And
got
him,
him
the Doctor.
noticed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Um. Yeah.
Which, yeah, in retrospect, Tom Baker's Doctor playing Rasputin, perfect fit.
A lighter take on the character, yeah.
Mm. But yeah. Rest in peace, Michael Jayston. Best, condolences and that and such to his family.
Mm-hmm.
So
All
moving
right.
on to
Yep.
Doctor Who news.
Moving into more typical Doctor Who news and starting with recent episodes. We have the Church on Ruby Road Blu-ray DVD now has a release date. Or we can probably say this is the UK release date since they're typically delayed in other parts of the world. Which is now slated for February 2024, which is this month, and specifically February 12th, which is yesterday. So if you're in the UK, you can have it already. And again, it's probably not quite so soon elsewhere. I didn't realize this was already released, so I'm just going to check Amazon US and see what that says.
They might
Not
say
the
something soon.
novelization. I'm not. There's too many categories on Amazon. There's no entry that I see for the Church on Ruby Road Blu-ray in Amazon US. So,
Oh, wow.
Still waiting.
yep. Moving on from there, next we have a few articles on the 2025 series, which they seem to be calling Season 2, although more often they just call it the 2025 series. So first off, Ncuti Gatwa and Varada Sithu, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who has been confirmed as the new companion. We're seen filming at a diner in Herefordshire. Probably should have skipped a few of those letters, but we don't have any Brits to correct me. On January 24th. I'm just going to scroll if there's any major information about the episode in that.
Herefordshire? Yeah, that's about right.
Filmed at the OK Diner, which was set dressed as the 10-cent diner. So, if you know when food was 10 cents, that might give you a good clue as to when the episode is set. And that's about all we have in that article.
Food was 10 cents
Next
probably
we have
early 1900s.
Mm-hmm. Next, we have the letter from the showrunner in Doctor Who Magazine 600, in which RTD gave an update on that same season. So first off, Block 1 of the season began filming in October and is entirely filmed by director Alex Pillai. That block was dedicated to the 2024 Christmas special, so that's not part of the season. But I guess it's part of the same production season, so that's why
Right.
it's brought up. They say that the editing should be mostly done, and the special effects being done, or the effects that are added in post being done now. Block 2 was directed by Peter Hoare. There's no polite way to pronounce that, and I don't know what is correct.
Horror.
Covers episodes 1 and 4. And this includes, this includes both Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson, so we know she's around seemingly until at least episode 4. These episodes are already filmed. Let's see. The opening scene of episode 1 was the last thing filmed, and that was sometime in the middle of January with none of the main cast. So, some sort of teaser or
some sort of
honestly,
opener for it. Yeah.
Hopefully it's not just a repeat of the whole like dropping the baby at the church thing, since we've now seen a couple versions of that scene. Then there was Block 3, which began filming on the 8th of January with director Amanda Bracci. That covers episodes 2 and 3. That includes the new companion, as well as Louis Cornet. And there's scenes we saw being filmed in Wales. Okay, so the Herefordshire one, as well as the other, the scenes we covered at our last podcast, which was I think it was a 1950s period piece that was filmed in Wales. So possibly the same story. There's a guest star in episode 2 who has played a different role in a previous episode of Doctor Who. Block 5 is rumored to be... Okay, how is it rumored if this is supposed to be an RTD update? This is the problem with getting our news third hand.
Let's see.
Block 5 is rumored to be directed by Ben A. Williams. Davies wrote that episode 5 has already had methodology meetings and the episode script is being readied. So that's what Block 5 is expected to contain. So that kind of shows how far the scripts are along during filming at any given time. So there, as of when Russell wrote this, which could have been a month ago, episode 6's script was still being finalized with the filming already scheduled. And then Block 6 would then have episodes 7 and 8. The episode 7 script sits waiting, and the episode 8 script will be written soon. Okay, so January 2 is when he wrote this letter. So if I had read another paragraph, I would have had the full answer to that.
I will say very quickly, apparently, the director, Peter Hall, seemingly is probably one of the more... I've probably actually seen stuff he's done, or at least I'm aware of, because apparently he did some Marvel TV stuff, like Netflix Marvel era stuff.
Oh.
An episode of The Last of Us, and 2 episodes of The Umbrella Academy.
So that's kind of modern day sci-fi stuff, basically.
Plus, he also worked with Russell on It's a Sin, because he apparently directed 5 episodes of that. So.
And knowing Russell, I'm guessing that's a modern day drama.
Most likely.
Yeah, it's set in the 80s.
Okay, so it's
about the AIDS crisis.
So AIDS epidemic. Sure. Yeah. So it's set in 1981.
And there you go. He has directed for Doctor Who before. He directed A Good Man Goes to War. There
we go.
Which was a future sci-fi episode. Okay. So yeah, nice to see some. I mean, considering the critiques we had of the Chibnall era, it's nice to see a confirmed sci-fi director.
It's nice to see someone that knows what the heck they're doing.
And actually move on to cast and crew news. We have an update on Ncuti Gatwa. This comes via Deadline. Tessa Ross and Juliette Howell of House Productions have announced that Ncuti Gatwa is attached to one of their projects. A thriller inspired by Strangers on a Train, which is set in Spain. So there's a script for it now. So it sounds like it's in pre-production at the moment. And yeah, Cult Box gives the extra information. Strangers on a Train was a 1951 thriller by Alfred Hitchcock, based on the
Mm.
novel of the same name. So,
I guess
based
once
so
again
we're
another
so we may be
reason.
looking. Sorry, go ahead.
Once again another reason he might be speed running his his time on
Right.
the show because he's
Yeah,
got all
so he
these
has
other
time to do things like
commitments.
this. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Um.
But honestly, this
Yeah.
should
So.
be an easy one, though. It doesn't require much on this.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, it should be probably a relatively short movie.
Yeah. So this sounds like a Hitchcock remake set near Barcelona. And then there's some filler at the end of the article.
Restraining myself from singing Queen's Barcelona. I'm not an opera
All right.
singer.
And then the last of the news, I'll turn over to Alex with the Big Finish news.
Mm-hmm. Um. We have some new releases from Big Finish on the 8th of February. They released Sontarans versus Rootans, The Children of the Future, written by Tim Foley and starring Tim Trelaw and Sadie Miller.
That's the Third Doctor and Sarah Jane, if you're not familiar.
And on the 13th of February, they released Third Doctor Adventures Revolution in Space, written by Jonathan Morris and starring Tim Trelaw and Sadie Miller.
Ta-da! Double feature.
Yep. All right. From there, we move on to Geek Talk, which starts with all the movies that I saw on planes this week.
So starting with Barbie.
Funny enough, putting them into release order puts them into the opposite order of how I watched them.
Oh.
But yes, so I wouldn't have initially thought Barbie fits on here, but it's almost like a Narnia movie, right? There's a separate Barbie world, and then they travel to the real world.
Mm-hmm.
It functions basically, the Barbie world is like a full-on matriarchy. Kens are second-class citizens. Because it's the way that little girls play with their Barbies. That kind of typically is how it works out. Barbie discovers depression and cellulite and finds out she has to go to the real world to find out who's playing with her and fix it. Which causes them to go to the real world and experience patriarchy, which Ken thinks is cool and brings back to Barbie world while Barbie is figuring out all of her shit. So it was very interesting. I wouldn't say, probably not the best, deepest movie I've ever seen, but I see why it's so well liked. It's very accessible. It's very flashy. You're not going to mistake what movie you're watching. It's a fairly good time. I'm trying to think if I have anything deeper, more interesting to say. I would say the acting is great. The visuals are excellent.
That's one thing I've heard across the board. Everyone was very pleased with the visuals.
There are some scenes that were basically done using like stage tricks, and then they kind of put out like a production video on it, and everyone was like, "These weren't CGI." So.
No, it's cheaper not to be CGI.
Yep. So sounds like the director and visual crew or effects crew definitely impressed people. Yeah, I mean, I don't have super deep things to say about it, but if you're interested in socially conscious, kind of low fantasy stuff, that's accessible to, a wide range of audiences, you definitely could do worse. It's probably not a movie I'm going to go back and watch like many times in the future, but I didn't hate it. It was pretty good. Next is Blue Beetle. So that was DC's big movie of 2023. And yeah, it's focused mostly on the Jaime Reyes Beetle, but it's also kind of like the legacy of the Ted Kord Blue Beetle, which I realize it's kind of funny that most of what I know about the Ted Kord Blue Beetle comes from Watchmen, even though they had to take his name out and give him a different name in that comic. But yeah, so it's basically the Kord Industries has the Blue Beetle Scarab, which hasn't bonded with anybody yet, but they're kind of using it to make like super mercenary cops. Almost like the beginning of that Dalek episode with Trump in the Chibnall era. But yeah, and then they introduced basically Ted Kord's daughter, who is just like unnecessarily pretty. Like as soon as you see her, you're just like, oh, she's going to be the good guy, because they would not cast someone this pretty in anything other than a main character good guy role. Which like that's not something I would normally comment on, but like it just felt like it was just
It
like
kind of just landed on you like an anvil.
12 for this particular actress, or maybe her makeup people. I don't know, but it was just way too front in that case. But basically, it's a movie kind of about the bonds of family. I already kind of mentioned the Ted Kord stuff, but it's largely about Jaime Reyes and his family. You know, it's the kind of setup where it's like he has this super annoying family that's just like very obvious in public, and this like conspiracy theorist uncle. And like by the end of the movie, like the whole family is working together to like overcome the fact that like Blue Beetle gets kidnapped and shit. So it's, you know, I'd say it's a pretty effective movie about family. George Lopez is in it, and I did not recognize him. I was like, I recognize the voice, but for a second I was like, damn it, I don't know enough about Cheech and Chong. Which one's Mexican?
That'd be Cheech Marin.
So yeah, for a second I was like, is that Cheech Marin? I was like, no. I looked it up and I was like, oh shit, that's George Lopez. I didn't know he could act. So apparently he can act.
Yeah, he used to be on a sitcom for quite a while.
I mean, yeah, but when you're on a sitcom, I mean, he was on a sitcom where he played, right, the George Lopez show, or a different sitcom?
I thought might have been George Lopez show. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
If you're on a sitcom that's named after you, you don't have to know how to act. Like, I don't think Jeff Foxworthy did any acting in the Jeff Foxworthy show.
Fair enough. It's just the BU show.
But the effects were also pretty good. It would have been nice if he learned to control the scarab enough to not melt away his clothes every time he transformed. He didn't need to be naked every time he came back to human, but whatever. But I would say it was a good movie, and I know there's people are saying, oh, well, it's technically not part of the new canon because, you know, it's not, it's considered part of the pre-Flash reboot stuff, but I think, I mean, it's standalone enough. Like, I think they mentioned Batman as existing, but like you could easily slot this as either a standalone or into any given continuity. There's a little bit of sequel bait at the very, very end. I would not be adverse to seeing a sequel to this. I thought it was a fun movie.
Alrighty.
All right, and then moving on to the Marvels. So I'd heard a lot of contradictory things about this, and I feel like I disagree with a lot of it. It was a fun movie. I would say Carol Danvers felt more human in this movie than any of the other ones, which makes sense because in the first movie she appeared in, she was brainwashed by the Kree, and so she's been learning to be a human ever since. Like, in many ways, she reacted like a normal person in a much more way than normal. She had a sense of humor. You know, so all of these things about, oh, no, you know, it's clear nobody wants to be there. No, you're mistaking acting for something bad. Because, I mean, Captain Marvel is still Captain Marvel. She's, you know, she's the experienced Avenger of the movie. And she also is basically going through a sort of redemption arc. Basically, the actions of the first Captain Marvel kind of resulted in a Kree civil war, which basically destroyed the atmosphere of their homeworld. And so they're going on kind of like this revenge tour where they steal natural resources from planets that Carol cares about. So it's Carol has been dealing with that, but it's also um, you have her niece and her fangirl basically forming this 3 generation team. So they're kind of trying to, draw her out of her shell and teach her, you don't need to be perfect before you can engage with people again. And of course, these rookie heroes are also learning from her to be more effective heroes and to work well as a team. Um, so I would say I enjoyed it. It kind of almost seems like it was written almost like as a Disney Plus miniseries. Like there's a musical episode, which I mean, it would have felt perfectly in place in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Um, but yeah, it kind of almost seemed like they wanted to do more with it, but didn't have the time. So and that's in that sense as well. It kind of feels like it was meant to be a 6 or 8 episode miniseries, but they just were told to make it a movie instead. There's also
that might be in fact because of a lot of reshoots. To be fair, too,
right.
because I understand that that was a thing that was going behind the scenes quite a bit with this one.
Gotcha. I mean, that might also be a reason for reshoots too, right? If they meant for it to be a series, considering it's the sequel to Ms. Marvel and the Secret to Secret Invasion, allegedly. I haven't watched Secret Invasion yet, but so it may have been meant to just be another series, and they were like, "No, you're going to do Captain Marvel too." And yeah, there's some sequel bait involving the X-Men in another universe. Uh, which kind of seems like they're going to do one of the things nobody wanted them to do with X-Men.
Which was?
But I get it, which is have the X-Men be from another universe instead of having always been on Earth.
Oh. Yeah, that's lame.
But, and yeah, I mean, and of course we all know the next big Avengers movie is supposed to be a multiverse crossover, so that fits. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I found all 3 of the main cast to be, fully fleshed out characters with different motivations and emotions and everything. Honestly, feel a lot of the attitude opinions out there are just haters who were coming into this movie hoping to find something to complain about. Maybe some of them weren't, but I don't know. I mostly like this movie.
Okay, dog.
And with that, on to Tekken 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's kind of a weird story with this game because I was only able to start playing it when I did because I ordered a collector's edition thingy that came with a statue in from Bandai Namco directly because all the other places I would have locally got it from had sold out already.
Wow.
And because I found out like 2 days after they announced it is when I realized that it was a thing. So it was like, oh, whoops, I guess I missed out. And then like they still had them from like the company making the game anyway, so I just got one from there. Had to get it from the European thing because they don't have an Australian store, so that's annoying. And thankfully they sent me, because they realized that it was going to take as long as it was for the physical copy to show up, they sent me a digital code. I was able to start playing it earlier than I otherwise would have, because it ended up being like a week late, I think. But yeah. Tekken, Tekken's got a very convoluted story, and like this was effectively them wrapping up, seemingly, the other half of, well, I guess the other, I don't know. Let's see, like Tekken 7 ended with Kazuya killing off Heihachi, so that family rivalry is done. And this one is
killing off
focused
for real,
on...
not just throwing him in a volcano and hoping he would die.
I mean, to be fair, Heihachi threw Kazuya in a volcano.
Oh, they've all thrown
the
each other in
events.
volcanoes multiple times at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. Like in this case, it's like, yeah, no, Heihachi's dead. I mean, I think even the director is flat out been like, no, no, he's dead. He's not even like I expected him to be like in the game and playable, but just not in the story at all. To be like, well, here he is, so you can play as him, but whatever. He's not in the game at all.
Hmm.
um,
Not even like a mecha Heihachi.
no.
I was expecting an undead one actually.
Um,
Kind of like Liu Kang.
mm. I guess the difference being, I think we actually see him go into the lava in the end of Tekken 7. But in any case,
Oh, they actually
this,
landed it. Okay.
um, yeah, this time it's the conclusion of that arc effectively with, of the Mishima Bloodline slash, well, at least the Mishima Bloodline arc with Jin versus Kazuya taking up the bulk of the story. I much prefer how the story is presented in this. Um, it almost did kind of bug me that the tournament takes more of a back seat. the the more story focused the story modes get. Like 6, they don't even have the story, the tournament factor into it at all. I don't think 7's did either. This 8 does, but
Wait, in
like
6, they had the undead
sort of.
grandfather in the tournament.
The what?
Jinpachi, the
No, that
undead
was 5.
grandfather.
That was 5.
Oh shit, that was 5, so I'm that far
Yeah.
behind. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, to be fair,
Yeah.
5 is the last one that came out on PS2, and I never bought a
Hmm.
PS3 or 4.
Well, funnily enough, if you can get a PS4 slash PS5 port of Tekken 6 now.
Mm.
um. Uh. But yeah. Yeah. This sort, like, I generally like how, because Tekken 7's story was handled really weird, and there was this monotone narrator talking about most of this stuff in between and such.
Mm.
And this time they're just like, no, no, no. It's just cutscenes with the characters doing this thing and whatever. And a lot of characters that I didn't expect to be able to play as during the story mode, you get to play as. They even, it's not really much of a spoiler, but they let you do, uh, like a tournament's announced, they let you do all of the first round matches in the block stage of the tournament, and you can pick whoever you want to win. And it's like eventually you get to Jin's match that you just have to play through because it's the story mode. Um, and you have to play as him. But yeah, that was like a fun little. Oh, I did not expect that. They didn't necessarily have to add that detail, but that's nice. And there are like other instances here and there where you play as people other than Jin, which I'm generally thankful for because I suck at playing Jin. So it was like, oh, thank God, characters that I might actually be decent with, here and there. Um, there, there's some callbacks to previous games in a way, which makes it feel like this is even much more than Seven's story. This feels like this is an end of this particular era of the story that's been going on since the first game. I mean, it took them bloody 30 years almost to get this far, but here we are. It's going to be interesting to see where we go from here. I don't know if there's going to be any story DLC, but I could honestly see it at this point. I don't think the director would want to do that, given things he said before that Bandai Namco has basically made him do anyway. Like, uh, it is likely that there are going to be characters that have been in previous games that are not on this game to begin with, are going to end up being paid DLC.
Oh,
Ah,
And
ew.
that is something that the director has previously stated that he doesn't want to do.
mm. Are there
that the
still
company has
characters that you can
basically made
unlock
him.
by like beating the game?
There are at least two that you unlock by beating story mode, possibly
Oh,
more.
that
I
I was gonna say
forget.
that's a lot less than 10. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think Bandai Namco are being a bit greedier this time around because I could be wrong, but I think the starting roster of Tekken 8 is smaller than Tekken 7. If it's not, then they've just like condensed the character select thing to make it look smaller. But it looks a
Mm.
lot smaller. So, and there are characters that I figured, oh, they were DLC last time. Maybe they'll be on this from the get-go, and it'll be different characters that are, DLC. Like that, like, they did the Mortal Kombat thing of having like, here's a character from another franchise with some of the Tekken 7 DLC, but there was also characters that had been around since like Tekken 2 that were, that were DLC, which was very much
That
like,
should not be DLC. When they dive that deep to make DLC, it's like, no, you're just here to try and rip me off on this one. I'll just wait until your game's like half price. Or
yeah.
you go on sale for like half price or something. Just nah. I'm so done with being nickel and dimed for a game.
Yeah. I mean, I assume if it's anything like, I think Tekken 7 did eventually have one of those releases where it's like, okay, here's the release with all the DLC included.
Yeah, I was just looking. They do have 7 and 8 on Steam, and 7 does have a definitive edition. Without a sale, it's still $100.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. That's when
not
I'd wait
as
till
bad
it's
as
half
I
price or less.
expected. Like, if you want everything from Dragon Ball Fighters, I think you're looking at $200.
For that game. That's too much for my blood.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's still not as bad as Dead or Alive, though. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Isn't one of them like $500 to get everything?
Oh, probably far more than that.
Between 500 and
I'm going to be
1,000, I
right
believe.
back, and I'm saying this out loud so that if Discord crashes on me again, who knows?
Alrighty. But
yeah, it's a fun game so far. The story is definitely an improvement on the last game's presentation of it, and it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. I also already have the platinum trophy. It took me 5 days, but only because I streamed it all. Otherwise, I probably could have done it much quicker.
All right. So with that, I guess we're on to the main show.
Mm-hmm. Right on the hour mark, too.
So tonight's big thing is we're going to be doing Doctor Who Regenerations. And is Bill still with us, or did he actually fall over? I hear nothing but silence. So I'm not sure how he intended us to cover these. Did he just want us to cover the episode in general? Just talk about the regeneration itself?
I think we were doing this by, like, basically as stories, with the theme being that they're all stories that regenerations happen in.
I'm back, and for once, Discord did not crash on me. Good.
Hello?
Maybe it's not going to happen anymore.
All right. So we're ready to hear what the plan is for this.
All right, yes. So we have the episodes in which each Doctor regenerated. Some of which that's a little awkward, like in Night of the Doctor and Day of the Doctor. We're just kind of ranking them as episodes, although it's kind of up to you if you want to really consider the regeneration and how unique that is to be an important scene. But we are rating the full story, whatever that means to you. So we start off with the 10th planet, first appearance of the Cybermen and the first Doctor's regeneration, and I mean, I personally probably there are some slow bits, so I would say maybe low A for me.
Mm. I can
I mean,
agree to
I think
that,
the slow bits are due to William Hartnell's health. So
which is the
Yeah.
main reason why this regeneration was happening in the first place, is because he was
yeah,
having worse and worse time of it.
Mm.
Um, I will say that also, depending on how they do it, sometimes the original Cybermen can be a little annoying to listen to, because that's a very high voice all the time. It's very awkward at points, but it did start an interesting returning villain that would get better and better as time went on, thankfully. Um, and I'm while I'll grade it a little bit on the episode, I feel like I should at least very much mention the regeneration itself, which I think that this regeneration, given the budget restraints and everything they had at the time, how do you turn a man into another man? And honestly, they did a pretty stellar job on
in
such a small budget.
1964.
In 64, with technology out of 54. Let's be honest here. BBC is kind of like 10 years behind modern television, at least at the time. I think they've caught up a bit in more recent years, but it kind of fluctuates depending on who's doing it. But back then, there was very much a much smaller budget until like the late 80s, essentially. So I'd give this at least a very strong A. There's some flaws, but it's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a little awkward at parts.
Yeah. It's like, it's one of those things where, like, despite his health issues, Hartnell does put in a good performance in this regardless.
Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, he gets a few decent lines in this too.
And it is, honestly, in hindsight, compared to all of the regenerations that come after it, it is kind of nice that it is left as just some mysterious thing that happens where it's just like, oh, wearing a bit thin, and then just collapses and changes, and there's no, even in the, like, the following story, Power of the Daleks, there's no explanation given for what happened. We don't find out until, like, friggin' Pertwee regenerates.
Basically, yeah. But by the time the Troughton regenerates into Pertwee, we don't really understand what that was about.
Well, yeah, we're told that the Time Lords are changing his face, but they haven't really established lore behind it, so we really don't understand why he turned into a smaller version of himself. Yeah, until Troughton regenerates into Baker. I mean, did I say
Troughton regenerates into Baker?
Pertwee regenerates into Baker.
But yeah, I would also give this an A.
Alrighty, it is.
Sounds unanimous on the A side.
The War Games.
Yep. So this is, the second Doctor's regeneration into the third Doctor. Although you only see one of those here. Notable for being one of the longest stories in Doctor Who history. And for apparently, at least appearing to empty the BBC's existing costume closet for historical reenactments.
We're just going to get all the reenactments on stage right now, all at once. And we'll even pull out some of our space age suits, too. We're going to go bonkers on this one.
This is complicated to rate. I mean, it drags on a bit long, but then you have the first appearance of the Time Lords, and they're suitably impressive for appearing for the first time. But then of course you don't get to see the outcome of the regeneration until the next episode.
You just see Troughton making silly faces in a kaleidoscope.
I'm like maybe B or A range, but I'm not really firm on that.
Hmm. The funny thing is this is actually the War Games was the first classic serial I ever saw, and like I will have problems where like things cannot retain my attention. For as long as this story is, I have watched this through in its entirety several times. Like
Which is to say
I
something about it, despite the
Even,
I
runtime.
even though the plot is the same plot pretty much as Tribe of Gum, they get captured, they
Hmm.
escape, they get captured, they escape, they get captured, they
Yeah,
escape.
which Terrence Dix has basically like admitted that like, well, they canceled a six-parter and a four-parter, and then on basically very last on very short notice, we're like, here, do a 10-parter, and so he pulled Malcolm Hulk in to co-write it with him, and as a
And it
like
didn't
he
even
basically
involve
admits,
any lizards.
and
No
like it was
lizards
as
but
a
Malcolm Hulk. It's so weird.
yeah, and it was basically kind of a shortcut of like, well, God, there's so many, so we'll do all these escape captured, but also that the plot is still kind of moving along as they go. Um, and we're seeing different perspectives, and it's funny because like that's never bugged me. I don't know why, but like like I've seen people say, "Oh, watch episode 1 and then skip to like episode 9 or 10." And I'm like, no, I've watched the whole thing like quite a few times now, and at least for me anyway, it holds up. Um, uh, and yeah, I mean, this is also the story that is the reason that I hate every portrayal of the Time Lords after it, because they're basically portrayed as gods in this, and then every other time they're basically a joke.
Mm.
So a bit it's always kind of annoying to me that, and it's
Well,
probably also
I'm not
because I
sure that
saw
so
this
much that
first.
they're a joke, but they're still gods. But they're now, as time has gone on, they suddenly became gods with a bunch of annoying,
They
stupid, useless red
Mm.
tape.
Well, yeah, the
they
problem
became
was that they,
bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they became a way for the writers of the show to make fun of modern UK politics at the time.
And to make fun of the US, the Celestial Intervention Agency was to make fun of the CIA.
Mm. Yeah, they generally make fun of the time politics.
Right.
Um,
I will say my memory, for whatever reason, has some gaps in where some of the characters came and went from. But I will say the majority of it, at least from what I recall of watching it the one time, did held my attention through most of it. Um, I do recall the very beginning and some of the middle parts were pretty interesting, and then the ending part was like just kept me on my heels the entire time for sure.
Hmm.
Like the end, the last couple episodes or so.
and
So
I
I guess some of it for a reason. It's been a long time, so I guess for whatever reason, some of it blends together for me. But I will say that a lot of it was pretty strong. But I will say also that the Regeneration was kind of meh. Even though it had a really good setup, it did turn into a meh Regeneration that we didn't really get much payoff on. So it does bring it down a little bit for me on that one.
What are our ratings?
I'm guessing I'm about B,
Okay.
I'm
and
gonna
I would
go an S.
assume. You're going S.
Yep.
Oh goodness. So
So I guess it averages out to maybe an A.
yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna
Yeah.
average out probably to a low A.
Hmm.
So there's War Games. Plunk. Planet of the Spiders.
Yes. So the Doctor finally makes it to Metabolus 3. Not pronounced Metabolus. Uh, Gets a crystal, which causes the spiders to. I don't even remember everything. This has been a weird few weeks, so I did not rewatch any of these.
You got the crystal. The spiders went into like some sort of weird hyper sped up mutation upgrade, but they also want the crystal back so they can get even more of their power back. Essentially, is what I
Right.
recall of the plot.
The Doctor brings back the crystal. He comes back and regenerates. Of course, we also have another Time Lord who's also exiled on Earth, who kind of explains regeneration to us for the first time. And of course, this episode is kind of the origin of "There's something on your back."
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe a B. Like the main thing I remember these are that the spiders look like you bought them at Spirit Halloween.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as much as I can forgive bad effects. If that's the main thing I remember from the episode, that's not good.
Yeah, the spiders were a little bit to be desired, with some chintzy lightning effects, I believe, in order to show that they're somehow controlling people's minds.
Like, surely Jim Henson must have had an apprentice that they could have hired.
For a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the few ones we're covering that I can't comment on because I haven't seen it.
Okay.
The only scene that I have seen is the regeneration itself, and that is like, from what I remember, very strong acting ruined by the fact that the transition between Pertwee and Tom Baker is just fade out, fade in. He randomly disappears, and then there's nothing there for a second, and then
the TARDIS lands. He face plants. Sarah Jane and the Brigadier comment on the fact that he's regenerating, and then he fades to Tom Baker.
Yeah.
The fade, while I don't recall it fading to nothing, but I will say that that at this point they could have done more than just a fade, and it is a little disappointed it didn't do something more with it. But at least they actually show it.
I mean, I think it was left ambiguous because they hadn't cast Tom yet with the John Pertwee yet with the War Games, because they didn't know if the show was going to continue.
Right.
That's still not an excuse to at least show us something neat. Instead, it gives us some really weird kaleidoscope stuff that doesn't do anything, and fade to music. Yeah, I will say the main story is pretty weak sauce, sadly. There is some interesting character moments in it, but that's about the only good highlight of it, outside of the regeneration, which again is a little bit to be desired. It feels like they could have done something more with it. I'm not sure what, but I'm pretty sure they could have. And it's just a simple fade after a really good couple moments of acting from the main crew.
By the way, is the stream showing unstable with lots of frame drops detected on your end, or is that just a problem with my internet?
For me?
Yeah.
I'm showing all green, so it must be something with your
So
connection.
I guess it's just a problem on my end, yeah. Which it doesn't really matter if I drop frames, I'm just watching it.
Checking in on my end on the actual stream itself, I don't see any issues. In fact, it animated my mouse really nicely there. Did a little loop-de-loop. Oh, actually, it probably won't see it anymore because I'm on the other window.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So what's your rating up for this, Matt?
Honestly, I'm kind of thinking this is a C. It was kind of a letdown, especially of how strong other stories were in this time.
Yeah. C sounds fair.
And Alex, I guess you're not going to really share, or are you? Or
Yeah,
at least judge it by the.
Alex hasn't really seen enough to rate.
Yeah,
Right.
for me, I just put this under cannot rate because I've only seen like one scene out of the whole thing.
So the general consensus of those who have seen it is it's a C. Logopolis.
Logopolis, I might get some hate mail for this one.
Uh-oh.
Logopolis is one that I feel has never lived up to what it should be. I mean, it's most of the action is just like it's like abstract. You have to imagine the universe being destroyed. The regeneration is like the doctor falls off of a platform. I mean, there is a kind of cool thing with the. I'm trying to. I'm trying to remember specifically the different. This is the one that has all the companions and all of the villains like circling his head, right?
No,
No.
that's Davison.
Yeah, it's Caves.
This is the Watcher.
This is the Watcher fusing
Okay.
into the Tom Baker and becoming the Fifth Doctor.
I thought they both had parts of that. Maybe not.
No.
I mean, Tom's has like flashbacks.
Oh, that's right. Because it's after Adric dies that
Yeah.
it wouldn't make sense for Tom to have flashbacks to Adric.
Yeah, he
And
has like. I think he has flashes of past stuff, but I forget if that's before the fall or after.
Mhm.
Because
And
I just
the
remember
Watcher, if anything, makes it worse because they were like, "Hey, remember this character from last episode? Well, the BBC decided to hire her, but we didn't have a better way to write her into the story, so we just sent somebody who's pretending to be your successor to go pick her up in a cab and bring her over, but there's really no explanation for why." And it's I would be fine putting this in C personally.
I think the effects on this one are much better for the transition and the regeneration, which would almost nudge it up to a B. But yeah, the main plot is good, but man, the some of the side plots like the what is it, the Watcher?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, what is this? Why is it here? What are we doing? How is this tied to regeneration? What is freaking going on outside the main story? It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of drags it kicking and screaming back down the sea for me. How about you, Alex?
Okay, so I'm not the only one rating it low. Okay.
The acting
I
is
think
good.
I-
The special effects were decent, but there's just so much bonkers going on for me.
I will say I think I initially had this higher, but that was probably because when I did watch this, I watched Keeper of Traken and then Logopolis. So I got like
So you
'cause
just kind of
effectively-
rushed right through it, and you had some really good keeper in your brain going into it.
yeah, so it was like watching both stories in a row, which it's kind of funny because like they do serve as part of a trilogy with oh my god, what is it again?
Castrovalva?
Castrovalva, that's it. Where like I didn't I haven't seen Castrovalva yet, but I know that that's like, I mean, I got them in a box set together where like it was those three stories, and I remember liking Keeper of Traken enough that I was like, you know what, let's keep going, and then watch Logopolis.
Matt and I both gave this a 4, but my memories of it, like without rewatching it, are not 4 out of 5 material.
There's some
but yeah,
highlights,
like-
but the main thing I'm focusing on also is the regeneration, and the subplot with the regeneration is like, what?
I mean, like, I give them points for trying to make it a unique regeneration.
Yeah.
I mean, which is really something that I give classic credit for over modern anyway. by
Yeah,
virtue of
modern
the
seems
fact-
to be the same regeneration every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Whereas classic always, even if they were like, it was always lying down flat, but they would at least try to make the effects somewhat different. Obviously some turn out better than others, but they're at least trying to make it a unique regeneration. So I give them credit for that. But yeah, I mean, it is like a weird thing that I don't think the Watcher has ever explained.
Nope.
Outside of just
I'm your future
assuming-
regeneration. Keep going.
yeah, like
What?
Even though I'm
it
pretty
would-
sure
How?
the Watcher's not played by Peter Davison.
well, yeah, I think Peter Davison has like said as such that he did not film anything until the Regeneration itself. And
But
I
by
think he
the
said that
way,
he probably would have done it,
Mhm.
but they just
right. But by the way, 11 years ago, Ran, Matt, and I gave all of these episodes effectively an A or higher. And again, my memories do not match up with that.
Mm. Well, it's probably also just a matter of hindsight that you're like a lot older now
Mm.
than you were then, so you'll be in a different mindset as well. Um, yeah, if nothing else, I feel like not having rewatched it, I remember liking it, not necessarily thinking it was like really amazing necessarily, but I think I can at least give it.
I'll
We'll
be
say
fair
a
to
B.
it. I was gonna say I can be fair to it and probably give it like a low B.
Hmm.
But there are definitely issues with it. So, and I believe Bill, you said C.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking low B, a high C. So I'm not sure where the.
I guess if nothing else, it's another regeneration triggered by a villain actually getting a win for a change.
Oh, that's true too. That's actually one of the good things about the story too, is the master finally got a little bit of what he wanted,
Mm.
which you don't normally get to see very much of either. I'll give it a B just for the fact that B has nothing in it right now. We'll see. Maybe if we get a lot of B's, I'll move it back down to C.
Mm.
It'll just be a high C.
Caves of Androzani, widely
Ooh.
regarded as one of, if not the best classic Who episode. Compelling drama, very very memorable regeneration. Got all the flashbacks of companions and villains, which I was thinking some of that was Logopolis, but if
No.
so, the Caves of Androzani version either way is a lot more complete and a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I think this probably goes in S tier.
I'm trying to think of a way to argue against it, but I really can't. It's some of the best acting they had at the time. Peter Davison finally gets to show his chops big time. He gets a new companion. Was she still new, or was she there for
Yeah,
an episode already?
like she was there. Perry was
It
there
was
from
her
like
second
the
story.
story prior.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we at least had our introduction of the new companion, and this is going to be the new companion suddenly getting shoved off the deep end to
Yeah.
see what happens.
This is the new companion going off to another planet for the first time and experiencing this story, and then the doctor regenerates at the end and starts choking her. But
And I
that's
mean, there was
the
a
choking
couple.
goes on next time.
Oh yeah, Chuckling starts next time. Oh my. But also the cliffhangers. I remember the cliffhangers in this story being amazing and like some really high tension stuff going on with this one in particular. The effects were at least decent for the time. The acting was superb. The story was really good, and we got the doctor properly sacrificing himself to make sure a new companion survives while offering himself up to regeneration. You do not see that very often, and that's something interesting in of itself. So yeah, I'm trying to argue against S and I can't. Alex?
Funnily enough, this is one that I've had to put in can't rate because
Oh,
I swear to God I've seen it, but I remember so little that I don't think I can make a fair call. Like all I really remember is the actual regeneration scene itself, which I would still put up there as one of the better ones.
and oh, by the way, the
Um,
evil scientist in this episode, I just remembered. You have the tongue of a crackling jackalips, but your eyes tell another story. It's like, oh, okay. Like super ham, but done just the right level, and just really intense villain throughout the piece. So sadly, cannot rate, and two people on S. One that wants to argue against it but can't, and the other one's just giving in. All right, Timon the Rani. Oh boy,
Yeah.
this
So
one
of
can be
course,
varying opinions.
this is the first time the regeneration was both triggered and happened at the start of the episode. They fired Colin Baker, then they called him up and said, "Hey, do you want to film 5 minutes of this episode?" And he rightly told them to blow it out their ass.
Right.
And then he spent 20 years saying, I never technically regenerated.
And Big Fish is like, we can fix that. We'll make an adventure on it.
He's like, I'm still the legit doctor. All these others are fakes. But yeah, this is the weaker of the two Rani stories. This, if anything, is the story that Mel is best known for because she does nothing but get captured and scream for the entire story.
And what a palpable scream. Holy smokes.
And, yeah, I can't say it looks, a lot of the looks stuff carries over. I don't remember if Mel's costume was from before. Obviously, the doctor's costume was from before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Visually, I will say that the effects in this one were impressive. It's obvious that they're finally getting a budget again at this point.
They did not have a budget in the Seventh Doctor era. You might be mistaken. They shortened the stories somewhat.
Yeah. The seasons went from 26 episodes, I think, or 21 to like.
I just remember
13.
looking at the visuals and this and a couple of other ones at this time and going, oh, it's actually kind of gone up again.
So it's probably because they were like, okay, we're shortening it to 3-parters and 4-parters. Compared to actually Sixth Doctor might have been all 4-parters or equivalents, but yeah, I guess making some of the stories 3-parters probably helps with the budget.
Probably.
But the Seventh Doctor era notoriously was hamstrung by budgets. So I guess the question falls into, let's see.
Unless it was a visual touch-up that I saw, but I remember being pretty impressed by a couple of things I saw. The costumes weren't that great. The bat monsters.
So last time I gave this last time we actually skipped it because we were just like there was no regeneration episode. Well, actually, wait, no. So where is? Not that I have to go off of that, but I'm just trying to find it. Okay, so yeah, so last time I gave that a 2.5. Kind of being nice to it. I mean, a 2.0 is a C. I think a C is reasonable.
Yeah, I would also add the regeneration is really cheap.
Yeah,
we added a glow effect to Sylvester in a wig, and then we just got rid of the wig.
The TARDIS gets hit, the Doctor falls and bumps his head, and then he regenerates with his face away from the camera, of course, because you couldn't show Colin Baker's face because they didn't have a Colin Baker.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kind of flip him over onto his back, and now he's Sylvester McCoy wearing like his grandfather's clothes.
Yeah, I'd agree that the C is at least being nice to it. There are some issues, especially when the Doctor becomes his own problem, like halfway through the story, or at the tail end of the story, actually. As I recall, he actually blurts out a correction and actually helps the villain at the end of the story. I will say,
yeah, I mean, Sylvester McCoy was funny in this, and there was the moment, like, the picking a new costume montage was kind of good.
Oh, yeah. I will say that at least Sylvester himself was a good point on this one. And he got some definitely amusing moments, but I think the story kind of, and a little bit of the monster costume.
None of that is enough to raise it to a B.
Yeah. And Alex, was this another one that you can't rate, or?
Yeah, this is another one I can't rate because I haven't seen it.
Alrighty. So the TV movie.
Another
Yep.
one I can't rate because I haven't seen it.
Gosh darn it.
That's the last of them. Everything from here forward, I've seen.
So the TV movie, we start with the Seventh Doctor in a Rassilon fetish TARDIS. He lands, he steps out into the street, he gets shot by gang warfare. They take him into surgery. They give him anesthesia. It kills him, causing him to regenerate inside the morgue, like he was like Friday the 13th Part 4.
Well, they give him anesthesia, and then they don't actually do a proper X-ray, and they stab him in his second heart and kill him, basically.
Yeah. So he regenerates in the morgue like Friday the 13th Part 4. And then, of course, we get the whole actual story of the movie. With the doctor, with the master being a snake that possesses things.
I will say that the master being a snake thing doesn't make any sense. It's interesting, but it doesn't make any sense.
They were like, how do we do Keeper of Traken, but also snakes are cool?
The doctor's death is lame.
I guess if you really wanted to double traumatize Tegan, the master turning into a snake would be a good way to do it.
Oh yeah, that's the things Tegan's nightmares are made out of right there. It's just all of her enemies now become snakes. Fuck that. The universe. She's had enough of the universe. The doctor's being shot down that way is pretty weird and lame. Also, literally stabbing him with medical gear in the heart and killing him was wow. You realize something weird is going on, but you just want to stab it in there anyway.
But I think even Sylvester McCoy might have even said like the movie would have been better if they had just not included him or not included nearly as much of him.
I believe he said something to that effect. Yeah. I will say the actual effect of
fits
the.
in a B.
I will say the actual regeneration is pretty good, and the rest of the plot thereafter is pretty decent. But again, weird stuff with the master and so on.
It's a very 90s CGI regeneration. That's the most on the nose way I can describe it. Like there's no other time that would have looked the way it did except the mid 90s.
Well, at least it wasn't a cheap pixelated glow effect again.
I know in like a thing, a DVD extra that's on the War Games, when they're talking about all the different regenerations, like one of the people who I think was a writer for like Russell's first era, I could be wrong, maybe he's just like a magazine writer or something. He's just like, well, you can tell it's Sylvester McCoy, so of course he's contorting his face as much as he can to help with the effect. But it's like Paul doesn't quite want to look as silly, so he's not quite committed.
And Paul was still mad about the wig.
Probably. That was probably part of it. He didn't want to be laying there with that silly wig on. I'm willing to also give this at least a B.
So we have B, and cannot rate, so that lands in a
on
B.
the B. Night of the Doctor.
Night of the Doctor. So the reason I put the cannot rate category in there was because Night of the Doctor is not a full episode.
But we could still rate it if we want to, at least by regeneration.
Okay. What do you think? Do you want to? Yeah.
It is canon. It makes sure that Paul is now canon. Even though we don't get to see all of his adventures on screen, we do have all the audios. And he does make some mentions to characters in the audios.
Yep.
We also get the sisters coming back from the Fourth Doctor era for the first time. Actually, it was the second time.
No, I think it
was the first time, and then they bring them back a couple more times after.
They returned, and then they were like, "Well, we already have the actor in the costume."
Yeah, have the main actress in the costume, so might as well just keep her coming back for a couple more ones. Yeah. Paul was astounding in this little short episode too. really good job.
This
playing
was
his
very
doctor.
much Big Finish, Paul McGann.
Yeah.
Which makes
None
sense
of
if
that.
it's supposed
None
to
of
be at
that
the end of his
half-human
life.
crap.
None of the half-human
Yeah.
crap. And, I'm going to die in a few seconds? How boring. Anybody for a game of chess? How about some knitting?
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was. I mean, yeah, it was funny. It was dramatic. It explained the War Doctor.
It explains the
It
War
just,
Doctor very well in a short period of time.
it just wasn't a full episode, so I don't know how to rate it.
Hmm.
I'm willing to give it like AS, honestly. It's very short, but it does
Yeah.
everything it needs to do very, very well.
Hmm.
And again, it even sets up some stuff that they borrow off of for later stuff too, to good effect.
Hmm.
I,
And
I
hell,
feel
even
like I feel like it didn't have to go through the work of telling a story the way the others did, which I would say bars it from being an S. I guess we could put it in A if that ends up being the majority vote,
Hmm.
but I couldn't
Yeah,
go
I'm
higher
I'm
than
fine
that.
with I'm fine with an A because it's just because of its length. It's
Right.
like and I mean hell, that being said, another positive is also, hey, the regeneration effect is different.
Right?
Not that we see it like encompass his whole body, but it seems
Hmm.
more like an effect that would line up with classic, which fits.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But yeah.
Next is Day of the Doctor. So this one's out of order because it is the War Doctor's regeneration into the Ninth Doctor.
Ah.
After, of course, being a full three Doctor story.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
A very
it's a
strong
very
three
good
Doctor story.
episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
if I recall, the main thing bringing it down was that Eli didn't like it all that much, and Eli's not here this time.
Nope.
Hmm. I was gonna say, I think that was like there was maybe one or two people in the
Oh
that
yeah,
were
Eli and
there at the
Lucas both
time.
gave it a 4, and yeah, neither of them are here.
Whereas I think everyone else that like everyone else that was there at the time, I think gave it a 5, and
Mm.
I retroactively gave it 1 after rewatching it.
Yeah. So,
Um,
as a story, we could easily give this an S. It depends if we
hmm,
want to weight the regeneration in any special way, and how we like the regeneration. I mean, it's basically a modern Who regeneration, if anything, one of the more toned down ones. But we never
hmm,
see it finish. He just says,
We start to see
um,
something change, and then we just hear the
yeah,
yeah.
we just hear
He's
we
like,
Eccleston
get
oh,
going,
like
"Oh, bloody hell," or something to that
yeah,
he's like,
effect.
we
I'm
get
about to regenerate. I hope the ears are
yeah,
less
yeah,
conspicuous this time. And
yeah.
that's
And
it.
from what I can remember, there's like a hint of Eccleston's face starting to come through, but
Mm-hmm.
my guess is if they showed the whole thing or like any more than the like little hint that they did, they'd have to get his permission. So they're like,
They would probably have to do
show a
something
bit.
special for it. Yeah.
Mm.
The regeneration is okay. The story itself though was really really darn good, and honestly is one of the few things to help redeem that current Doctor, because we had some on again off again moments of, can we just smack the Doctor because he's being a pinhead moments during that season, and that was actually one of the moments that actually redeemed him. He was being a pinhead because he just doesn't want to sit there and mope,
Hmm.
which is totally understandable to some degrees. He doesn't want to sit there and just remember all the bad things. So he goes a little over high wire. This boy needs to get some decaf. But I'm willing to join on the AS tier on this one.
Yeah, I'd say it could definitely be an S, mainly because it still holds up. And I feel like, as much as it annoys me that they have retroactively made it that the War Doctor is the start of the modern Who effect as far as the lineal regenerations go. And to be honest, the version of the effect that they use with them even looks a bit cheap. I feel like now, if I rewatched it again, that regeneration would probably hit a lot harder now that John Hurt's gone.
Passed away, yeah.
Yeah, like, because I feel like there are things like that where like I'll realize they'll hit a bit harder than normal. By virtue of the actor no longer being with us. But yeah, I generally think the story is strong enough that it can justify being an S.
Alrighty. So, parting of the ways.
Yep. So we've got the Daleks show up. The Doctor doesn't know how to beat the Daleks and sends Rose away. Rose is like, well, what if I fused with the TARDIS, became a god, destroyed the Daleks, made Jack immortal, and then the Doctor kisses the TARDIS out of her and regenerates into David Tennant. I'm probably thinking something, let's see, so, yeah, probably in the B to A range. The ratings on this in the past are a little lower than I would expect, just based on this general storyline. But I think a lot of it has to do with the whole like Rose becoming a god thing.
Yeah, Rose suddenly out of nowhere becoming a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
At this point, the regeneration effect was fairly new.
Yeah.
And it wasn't blowing up the TARDIS every time it happened, which is nice.
That being said, also, despite this being a relatively new way of doing the regeneration and not going completely bonkers blow up, it was also the reason why the Doctor is still on his feet the entire time is because he's literally surging with energy. Mm-hmm. It's not knocked him off his feet. As a matter of fact, if anything, it's causing him to stay on his feet.
If I remember right, one of the first things out of his mouth was Barcelona.
The new Doctor, yes.
Oh, he's like...
Yeah,
he's like...
New teeth.
I think he's
That's weird.
New teeth.
Where was I? Oh, yes, Barcelona. And then the energy has a side effect on him, which causes him to crash the TARDIS.
Yeah. Yeah.
And happens to crash land right at the right place at the right time.
And is like unconscious for a bit, which, you know, that would have been a pretty strenuous regeneration. So
I can't blame that on them. That actually works with the story. Yeah. I'm like A-ish tier with this one. There are some questionable things with the plot. Again, the Deus Ex way that they end it, but forgiven that, the rest of it's pretty good.
I think this is one of those ones for me when, like, when we talk about the regeneration itself, in hindsight, literally every modern Doctor regenerating standing up bugs the shit out of me.
But that's because they borrowed it for whatever reason out of this one, though. Yeah. So,
like, it was unique when the Eccleston to Tennant regeneration happened, but now it's like, oh, they're just all like that. So it kind of retroactively.
Well, it's because they're all fireworks now. Firework. If you light a firework down, you're just gonna set a fire.
But yeah, it's... God, I didn't end up getting a chance to rewatch this one, but I've seen it several times. And it's one of those ones where the older I get and the more I'm like annoyed by all the Rose stuff, although she's usually tolerable in the Eccleston run, it's everything after that where she becomes like unbearable.
Way too clingy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, she's not perfect at all by any stretch in the Eccleston run, but she's a lot more bearable than anything that
yeah.
comes after
When the
that.
Doctor suddenly becomes a bit younger, she suddenly becomes super clingy, and it's a little weird.
I've always disagreed. I always like her a lot better in series 2 than in series 1. But
Mm. And like, I
I
mean, in
don't hate
series
her as a
2, she
character.
has the
I
thing where
just
she's
find that one bit of her
yeah,
character a bit weird.
yeah. I mean, it's generally the writing kind of hampers her because she becomes very, oh, the Doctor's showing interest, is talking to another woman. How dare he? Kind of attitude that's like, oh, what are we doing, Russell? Come on. Like School Reunion, like slipped way down in my mind in hindsight because Rose is just annoying. But in any case, Parting of the Ways. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm leaning somewhere like low A, high B.
So in general, A's
Um,
about. Blink. Alrighty, the end of time.
end of time, yes. So
ooh.
the regeneration or the resurrection of the Master as a lich from his phylactery ring, which is never really explained.
Mm.
Rassilon sending drum beats into the Master's past in order to drive him insane. Um, the Doctor wielding a pistol against Rassilon. And then I don't even remember how Wilf ended up in a room that needed the Doctor to sacrifice himself to let him out of the room.
I believe
Were they
Yeah.
in a nuclear reactor? Like, that never quite made sense to me.
those rooms were about to be flooded with something nuclear or something along those lines. Something deadly in there.
But
I
it's,
forget what it was.
Yeah.
how
But
did Wilf get in there, and why did the Doctor have to
Wilf
trade
had to go
places
in there
with
to
him
get
let him
something, and I
out?
forget what that something was, and that's how he ended up sealed in there. And then the
Yeah.
Doctor looks back and goes, "Oh no, you had to, didn't you?"
Yeah.
But yeah, there's good and bad things about this story. I'd probably say B.
I'd agree about B.
I'd
There's some hokey
honestly
things, but a lot of it
probably.
was still pretty decent for the most part.
I'd honestly like, even if it like, honestly, because of counting the entire story rather than simply focusing on the regeneration, I'd probably say a C or lower because I do not like this story. It's like the Master is basically the Joker who can shoot lightning out of his hands. The Doctor is a whiny asshole. Especially when he goes to save Wilf, he just looks like, oh,
Hmm.
why do I have to
Well,
do
yeah,
this?
'cause he thought he had
I think it was.
he thought he had just won and avoided
Yeah.
any
I think it was.
consequences, and then it's no.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's less of a why did I have to do this and more of a why did it have to be you?
Yeah. But like,
Well,
just
it was.
the
I mean,
expression on his face is
the
very, oh god damn it, rather
the
than, oh
story
no.
starts with his hubris, right? Like, we just had these three
Mm.
stories of
Mm-hmm.
I'm the Time Lord victorious. I am unto a god.
Yeah.
And then the Ood, they're like, yeah, shit's gonna go bad soon. And he's like, yeah, no, it's not. I just went back in time and fucked the queen. And then fucking Rassilon shows up and is like, unto a god, you say.
Yeah.
Um, question, do we think this story has changed in retrospect by the fact that we know that when the Master and Rassilon are like, they go off and fight, we now know that the Master wins because Rassilon regenerates and the Master doesn't?
That's kind of a funny
Does that
thought.
change? Does that change how we think about this story at all?
I don't think it changes the story itself, but
mm,
I will say that I'm bemused by the outcome
yeah.
because Rassilon kind of had that shit coming.
Mm. But yeah, like, between all of that, like, the Master just not really being the Master at this point, the Doctor being whiny, like the overly long, overly dramatic, let's catch up with everyone on their way
Mm.
out because he has to say,
Oh
like, the
yeah,
Wilf one is fine,
that's
but all
part
the
of
other ones are
this.
like,
Yep.
come on. And
The
then like, and the whole
you
like,
Actually, I'm going to change mine to
and,
C
like,
because all the hokey skeleton effects of the Master.
Mm.
Those are
Although,
like leftover Dalek effects
Yeah.
that don't even look that good.
To counter that, James Bond was a good wrestler.
True. He really was, but he was more of a guest cameo.
Yeah, like
He did a
like,
lot with what little he was given, but he was still very little.
yeah.
It was
Dalton could
matter of fact, it
only-
was disappointing when we got another wrestler, but at the same time, it's like also, you lost to the master. Fuck you.
Yeah. Like Dalton could only do so much.
True.
Especially could not overcome the like implied incest thing with the people who were working with the master, which never really.
Wait, what?
I don't know why the hell we did that, Russell. Don't you remember that? Like the people that are working with the master, the black dude and his daughter. There's like this really weird.
Oh,
fucking
I forgot
vibe
about that.
between the two.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. There's a very
Ugh.
icky vibe between the two when it's very clear that it's like, dude, that's your daughter. Can you not? And like, why are we doing this in Doctor Who? This isn't Game of Thrones, Russell. Can you back off from that?
Let's not red wedding, please.
Yeah.
So the question is it bad enough to go in the same tier with Planet of the Spiders and Time and the Rani? Or does it belong in the tier above them?
Me personally, I'd still say C because it's like to me. It's probably the worst of the modern Who regenerations, and there's so much about it that just irks the crap out of me.
Honestly, I like Logopolis in the TV movie better than this.
Okay.
I'll be blunt on that one. Yeah. Meh.
That's the majority. And speaking of regenerations with issues, we have Time of the Doctor. This episode starts with Matt Smith naked to everyone except for Clara. And then Clara and Matt Smith are naked to everyone except for the audience. And then they like roll down a hill together. And no, I will never get over that scene, and you will not get me to stop complaining about it. Then they go to the village of Christmas.
Bill's brain will never unsee.
Then they go to the village of Christmas, where you can only tell the truth. And Clara says she has a crush on the Doctor, because that's definitely not played out by this point.
Yeah.
And then Matt Smith is like, hey, I also want to have super old age makeup like David Tennant did. And then Clara begs the Time Lords to send energy through a crack because they needed to reference the cracks from Series 5. And then the Time Lords are like, here's some energy. Use it to blow up a Dalek fleet before you regenerate.
And we'll even make you young again while you're getting ready to regenerate for no apparent reason.
I'm taking a certain tone and focusing on all the negatives of this because there are positive episode points of this episode. But I figure somebody else will point out a positive now. I was pointing out all the weird shit.
I mean, from what little I remember of this, because I think I've only seen this the once, I at least remember Matt Smith doing a decent job of portraying the old man, which mean, at his best, his Doctor was an old man. Was an old man with the face of a young man.
Ugh. What was that?
Oh, sorry. I meant to mute my mic, but I guess I didn't hit the button hard enough.
Weird. Okay.
I was.
But yeah, like.
I also just realized we're getting close to 2 hours. We've apparently been spending more time chatting on each one than I thought we were.
I mean, the main thing that I recall from this and liking was just the fact that when the actual switch happens between Smith and Pertwee, that it's like just a split second. It's very quick. It's a new effect, and I'm just like, oh,
it's a proper new burst.
And
yeah.
they honestly, I had it in my own head at the time. Oh, so this is what regenerations are going to be like moving forward. Nope.
Nope.
But
I also recall some amusing moments with returning villains, but they were also very short and mostly filler. Also, the potatoes are still stupid potatoes, apparently, even though
I
they're
mean,
supposed
I
to be
guess I,
big bads of the universe. I don't
I,
know.
I, gue- I guess I also like that this ended up being Moffat confirming that no, the time Tennant's first go through of the Doctor like cheated a regeneration did technically count, and then we've
Yep.
retconned the War Doctor in, so no, this is my final
Mm-hmm.
life, and that the Time Lords had to give him a new set, which future stuff that's come after, we know they weren't necessarily necessary, but whatever.
That's because some people don't know what the freaking canon is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Anywho,
probably like this less than I like the End of Time. Um, so maybe in that C range, depending if you two agree.
I'm. There's some really good moments, but the good moments are few and far between. I'd agree this is a C to D range.
Yeah, I'd be about the same.
So C it is.
Okay. Next is Twice Upon a Time, and if we're counting this, if we're giving extra emphasis to the regeneration, this loses points because he comes into the story already dying and is like, let's have a whole episode before
Right.
regenerating. Because
I mean,
Which is BS.
yeah.
yeah,
The main thing I recall is that this was like 3.5s across the board because none of us had like particularly rant-worthy issues with it, but also so it was just like, it's fine,
I mean, there were
and that was
definitely
about the
rants
consensus.
because they were like, "Oh, remember that time the
Ah,
doctor threatened
yeah.
to spank his granddaughter? Well, what if he does that to every young woman he comes across?"
Right.
Ooh.
Mm. I mean, like generally the consensus, I remember it being 3.5s across the board, and so essentially the consensus was
So that
fine.
would be between a B and an A, or like a high B, if that's what
Mm,
we stick with.
yeah. And I like honestly, I don't think I've rewatched it since, but I do generally just remember it's nothing
I mean, the main
too
story bits is
egregiously
yeah.
bad.
I remember the main story bits being fine. It's just that if we're focusing especially on the regeneration, the word regeneration was a big effing
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Because if I remember right, the only reason this story even exists is because Chibnall did not want to bother with a Christmas special as his first foray. So Moffat was like, "Oh no, but if we don't do a Christmas special, we'll lose that slot. So I better do one on my way out." And
There
yeah.
you go. Bye.
So, I mean, yeah, if it's 3.5s, that's B range. I think B range kind of fits. It's I would argue probably not, probably too many things keeping it from being an A, but maybe better than the C range things.
Yeah, it's not an A. Yeah, I kind of thinking BC as well.
Okay.
Alex?
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with B.
Alrighty.
Okay. So B it is.
Boink.
The Power of the Doctor. I think yeah, I would say really good episode. This was the BBC Centenary special, and I think at this point many people would say the true 60th anniversary special.
Yep.
Although the next episode on our list also kind of gives that a run for its money. Uh, we get the Doctor regenerating into the Master, and then while it's still unstable, being carrying that through into regenerating into David Tennant. But I don't think we're holding the David Tennant part against it at this point. Um,
I'd
so
give
yeah,
it about an A, I guess.
okay. I'm like
I
I'd be
don't.
fine giving this an S.
I remember being a bit annoyed, but I also recall being like, okay, this is at least better than everything we've just gotten this previous season.
You were the low ball with a 4.0, so it makes sense that you would be the one to say an A.
Mm. Yeah,
So
like
Alex
this.
tiebreaker, unless you hate it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, again, as I would have brought up last time this came up when we were ranking the Chibnall era. Um, this I still think Carol the Doctor is the best thing he ever wrote for Doctor Who.
Okay.
Like
Oh, see, for a
it
second
has
I
its
thought you were
issues.
about to penalize it for the standing up.
No, like at that point, it's like a
Oh, actually,
background
this does have a
annoyance.
unique regeneration because this is the first time the clothes changed,
Hmm.
which is probably not in its favor.
Yeah, that's more of a
Right.
huh.
Yeah, like if we were counting just purely the regenerations on their own, I'd probably knock it down slightly because they
Yeah.
never ended up explaining that.
Mm-mm.
That like they had an out with the bringing the toy maker back, but they never ended up explaining away why the clothes
Hmm.
changed outside of the meta reason of, oh, I didn't want to give the transphobes fuel, and then you went and gave them fuel anyway. But but yeah, I would definitely give like have Carol the Doctor be an S.
So you two are an S and
Uh,
I'm an A, so that goes up to S.
Yes, I guess tiebreaker
So
is an S.
finally, the giggle.
Yes, and the giggle it looks like was a bit more controversial on our ratings. But
mhm.
yeah, so here we have this is the final story with David Tennant. 60th anniversary clash with the toy maker. Pretty recent in all of our memories.
Mm-hmm.
And the regeneration is the bi generation, and that is basically, I guess, we're thinking caused by the toy maker rules being funky. And of
Yeah.
course, the TARDIS also bi generates.
Mm.
Flippin'
So,
dumb and made everything worse.
Yeah.
um,
Um.
I may not go. I mean, well, this was another 4.5, but I may not go quite as high and might put this more in an A, especially looking at the slightly lower average between the three panelists.
mm. I mean, yeah, like if I remember right, our stance on this was like it was less annoying than the Star Beast, but not as good as Wild Blue Yonder. Um, when we were rating it just as an episode, comparing it to all the other in comparing it in this context to purely other episodes and stories where regenerations happen. Hmm. I'd probably either have it be an A or a B.
Hey, Matt,
You're
you were the
all,
you were the low ball initially
you're all
when
very
we.
generous.
Yeah.
If I
So
was
I
if I was to rate
yes.
it on the regeneration alone, there's so much what the hellery going on. It would be DF range. But at the same time, I can't argue that the story was actually really good up until that point.
And
Uh,
you gave the story a B, which I guess was including the regeneration.
Hmm.
so yeah, I'd agree on the B. So are we? So you two are what
Yeah,
now?
it's a. I
So
said
I
A
said
or B,
A.
so
Okay.
So it's basically
arguably
AB.
that could. Hmm. So give it.
Yeah. So
Well,
it
I
falls
guess we
into
could just
low
put it
A,
as like
high
a
B.
high B. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I mean, we're not really going through and putting them in order because then these would take twice as long. But
Yeah.
Is there a way to give a AB section?
I mean, you could just
um,
put it like high in the B's.
mm,
I'll just put it on the tail end of A for now. But yeah, it's a
okay,
highly contested AB.
all right. And yeah, of course, we don't have Gatwa's final episode yet.
So
Mm.
that's where it ends for
So
now.
this is our final tier. Everything, nothing in the D or F range, thankfully.
Although there was
That
probably
might
a few temptations.
that might change when we look at every Doctor's first episode. Depending on how we feel about snails. Or was it slugs? Slugs, I
Oh,
think.
slugs.
But yeah, so this is our final Rankings, Caves of Androzani, Day of the Doctor, and Power of the Doctor as the S's. So let us know in the comments what you thought of these episodes. Don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far. And subscribe on YouTube to get our exports each time. Or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Next time we partake in our annual celebration of Elizabeth Sladen's birthday with Sarah Jane Smith, Ghost Town. Written by Rupert Light and starring Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith and Jez Fielder as Josh Townsend.
Alrighty. See you all next time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.